Hi, we're hanging out today with two of our elementary principals. I'm Josh Mulvaney, Director of Technology at Ball Chatham Schools. Ladies, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Tammy Kuhn, principal at Glenwood Elementary School.
And I'm Tricia Burke, principal of Ball Elementary School.
Today's hangout, we're going to be discussing a book study that both elementaries are doing on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So great book by Stephen Covey. Tammy, do you want to start and say why did you choose to do the book study on the 7 habits?
Sure. In May, several principals, we had the opportunity to travel to Iowa for a 3-day conference. It was a Rethink Leadership. And the first day was a crash course, I guess you could say, in the 7 habits. That day was pretty eye-opening, powerful, emotional. And I started to realize it was really what I needed. I became very interested in learning more about the book and about the 7 habits itself and trying to put that in practice. At first, it was more about just me. I didn't realize how much I needed to just kind of look inward a little bit more. And so ordered the book just for myself right away. And then the more that we talked through that week, started realizing that it could be something that'd be very beneficial for staff if they wanted to join a book study. I think for me, I always just personally felt selfish if I tried to look inward or do things just for myself. But I always love the quote, you can't pour from an empty cup. And I realized I really kind of need to walk that talk if I'm going to say it to other people. And this, this could be something that is personal reflection or personal change, a professional change, and just looking forward to the book study and opened it up to volunteers in the staff who wanted to. And we had quite a few jump on, so I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds good. And that you had a good quote there, Tammy. And when we attended one of the other trainings on the Covey trainings, a quote that stuck with me too was that you can't pour from an empty cup. If you're constantly pouring from your cup to fill other people's cups, sooner or later your cup's going to be dry. So that stuck with me as well. That was a great quote. Tricia, how about with your building? Why did you guys choose the 7 habits?
Well, like Tammy, the 1-day training that we did get to attend in May had a big impact on me. And I really wanted to read the book and learn more. And I wanted to give the opportunity for any staff to experience that same thing. I think about this quote a lot when I think about educators. It really speaks to what I think the profession is. And the quote is, the best thing about teaching is that it matters. And the hardest thing about teaching is that it matters every day. And I think being an educator is such a rewarding profession, but yet it can be so very taxing and overwhelming because you're never done. There is always more that you can do. There are always things that, oh gosh, if I just did this differently, or if I did this, I can help this student more. And it's so easy to feel guilty for all the things that we don't get to because it's all about kids. And if we just did more. And so that's so overwhelming. But I also am someone who firmly believes that we can be passionate, driven, and successful educators, but also be just as passionate, driven, and successful in our home fronts. But it's hard. And I think this conference, this training was just so inspiring and eye-opening to me on how these habits can help us to live that and help us to see how and our values that we can use our time to be successful. And Josh, I was excited when you reached out to want to join the book club. So what made you want to join it?
Well, first, I want to tell both of you ladies, thanks for allowing me to join. I'm a type who always is looking to grow, both professionally and personally. I've heard great things about the 7 habits, so I wanted to jump on and see what it was all about. And I'm too. I find myself, I want to make sure that I'm being most effective at work, and at the same time at home, I don't want to stretch myself too thin. And oftentimes I know that that's easy to do whenever you're trying to be so passionate about your work and passionate about your home life. So it's tough. It's a lot harder than what it seems like it should be. And again, thanks both to GES and BES, Ball and Glenwood, for involving me and letting me take part of this. I'm looking forward to it. I think this is a great opportunity for both buildings to build as a team, to tighten as a team, and to be part of that team is special for me. I took a quote too from John Gordon that I really like. No one achieves success alone. We all need a team to accomplish great things, and a united and positive team is a powerful team. And I think this book study gets us right on that, to really get things started as a positive team and rebuild and build a good positive culture in both buildings. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about habit one. Habit one is being proactive. Tricia, if you want to start, what was one of the major things that you took away from habit one?
I think the major thing I took away from habit one, being proactive, is really power. I think oftentimes we get caught up with feeling like we are at the mercy of all those things happening around us or to us, and we forget how much control we really do have. And I'm a quote person, so there's another quote that resonated with me in this chapter on habit one, and the quote says, "Between what happens and our response is a space. That space is where our power lies." And I think that's so thought-provoking and powerful, and it can have a tremendous impact on how we lead our lives. That's not to say that we're not human and we're not allowed to have emotions. I think that's what makes the human race great, is that we have our emotions so we can find out what's important to us. So it's okay to be angry when things happen or get overwhelmed or feel that stress. But for me, this habit helps me to realize the power that I do have in deciding how I'm going to respond and how long I'm going to allow myself to stay in those emotions of stress and anger and being upset, that negativity, before I realize that I can plan out how I react in a very proactive way, and use that power to respond in ways that will lead to positives and solutions much faster.
That's great. How about you, Tammy? What did you take away from habit one?
Habit one had so many wonderful takeaways, and I think mine relates very much to what Tricia took. But understanding that I do have control, although I may not have control over events that come my way. But again, I have the control of the language I use, the behaviors, my actions, and my thoughts, the quality of my thoughts. And I think, I think about where I spend my energy, or when we spend our energy in certain places, what gets our energy? Are we spending so much of our energy on things that we worry about? I'm a worrier by nature. And so this habit is really good for me to continue to think about, am I spending the time worrying about or my energy on things that I really don't have control of, but I do have control of how I'm responding to these things. Like Tricia, I love quotes too. And Sonia Friedman says that you have control over three things: what you think, what you say, and how you behave. And to make a change in your life, you must recognize these gifts are the most powerful tools you possess in shaping the form of your life. And it really does. I think I need to think about more about where I spend my energy, because I can exhaust myself before I even get to those things that I really do have some control over. And I think, in the profession that we're in, there's so much that is thrown at us, and we have to think about how we're going to respond to that, or what's going to get our energy. And I don't know, it's one of those things. I told myself that with this habit that I wanted to find a quote a week or an inspiration that I really focus on. And so right now it's about my thoughts. And so the quote that I've been using the past week and a half or so is, the happiness in your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. So I try to keep thinking about my thoughts, and remember, I have control over how I perceive the events that come to me in life.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I love the quotes too, and actually, I chose a quote from the habit one that actually was a quote of somebody else, where he quoted T.J. Watson, the founder of IBM, by saying, "Success is on the far side of failure." And I think, admitting failures and accepting failures is a tough one, a tough juggling act. I think it's one of those things that we don't realize that, a failure is never really a failure if we learn from it and growing from it. And one of the biggest things that you have to do is acknowledge the failure and grow from it. And being proactive, if you make a mistake, the best thing to do is acknowledge it instantly, correct it, and learn from it. I think it also illustrates that we need to teach that it's okay to fail and to be able to turn that into a positive, which also kind of preludes to another idea that I had, was nothing great ever came from easy. If we want to do great things, we'll fail along the way, but if we choose to do what we choose to do after we fail, will define where we are and what we'll become. Oftentimes, I know it's a tough juggling act, especially with being educators and being parents. We want to see kids succeed. We always want them to do well. So it's one of those things to try to say, hey, it's okay to fail if we learn from it, and that's a lot of times after failures where we see our biggest growth. But again, it's one of those tough juggling acts to find that happy medium, to let them know it's okay to fail as long as you acknowledge it and grow from it. So that's on habits 1 and being proactive. Next, we got habit 2, which is begin with the end in mind. What's something that stuck with you, Tammy, on habit 2?
I think so often we get caught up in living day to day. Habit 2 is really about the big picture. The book talks about a vision statement or a mission statement, and whether this is personally or as an organization. When I think about the big picture personally, I think this was a pretty emotional habit for me to do, because it really makes you reflect within. But you think about who you are, what you stand for, what do you value most in life? Because it's really about that big picture, how you're going to live day to day, moving towards that big picture. I know that for me, I'm still working on that statement. It's not something that's going to come quickly, but I do know what I value: my family, my friends, my faith, my core values, my health, and just that lifelong learning. The habit is definitely, or these habits themselves are definitely, something that's guiding us personally, but still can relate to an organization. So I think that it was great just to open this up, and something that we can look at, not just ourselves, but as a school or as our organization as well.
Sounds good. Hey, Tricia, how about you? What did you take away from habit 2?
Like Tammy said, I had a really emotional response to this one as well. There's a video that goes along with this habit that asks us to think about our 80th birthday and what we would want people to say to us or about us at our 80th birthday party. And I got really emotional watching that video, just thinking about my dad. We had just celebrated my dad's 80th birthday. And during his birthday party, I wrote cards to him and said amazing things about them. It made me really think back to that and ask myself, how is it that they were able to say these wonderful things about him? And it's because he knew who he was. He knew what he stood for, and every action and every way he has lived throughout his life has matched his values. And so it really let me see how, if we know who we are and we define that and we make sure that everything we do answers to that we can have our 80th birthday and be so proud of the way we've lived our lives. And then I think I've done a lot of reflecting about ball this year as well. We actually were living habit 2 and didn't even know it at the time, because I hadn't read these habits or anything, but we went through a process of defining a vision statement for ball. And Josh, at the beginning, you mentioned the quote from, I think it was John Gordon, that a united team is a powerful team. And we talked about that at ball this year, that we wanted a vision for ball. We asked ourselves and had lots of meetings about what would be the perfect school. What's the end in mind for us? We didn't say those words, but now that I reflect on this, I realize that's what we were doing. And we came up with a vision of encouraging, succeeding. And then our next steps will really be using this next year to come up with all of our actions that need to lead us there, because we know what we want in the end. And now it's about living it and really asking ourselves, how can we make this come true? What do we want everybody, kind of like the 80th birthday thing, when people leave Ball Elementary, whether it's a student or a parent or a staff member, when their time is done here, what do we want them to say about us? And we have the power to determine what that is based on the actions we do. And now that we know our values and what's important to us, we can hopefully make that come to life.
That's great. And that's kind of what I ultimately took from whenever I think about habit two, I think about legacy and what type of legacy do we want to leave? I see it as our purpose, our why. Once we know and can answer our purpose and our why, then we're able to plan and have the discipline to achieve it. It helps answer decisions we encounter in life. You know, if you let your why guide you, you're able to make those decisions that you face on a daily basis. I'll regulate around that why, and it makes it a lot easier. For me, I always think about my biggest why, and a lot of it's my home life, but I think about my kids drives me a lot, and the decisions I make, and the thing I want to leave is being able to, you know, whenever I come across a difficult situation, I think about them, and again, thinking about my 80th birthday, if I picture my daughter or one of my sons and somebody asking them, you know, well, who was your role model growing up? I want them to, the first thing they think about is their dad. I want to make sure I set the examples for them and leave the legacy that, a good legacy that's the first thing they think about is I was a good role model for them. You know, Charles Barkley, I remember a famous quote commercial where he was a pro basketball player, and he says, "I'm not a role model," which I totally don't agree with. But, you know, at the same time, I don't want my kids to have to go out and think about external role models. My why is to provide that role model and be that role model for them. And then I start thinking about Glenwood Elementary, Ball Elementary, and even the district as a whole. And I love it, Tricia, you guys that are an accomplishment, and I know Tammy in her building, one of her teachers said, "Hey, what if we came up with a mission statement for Glenwood Elementary?" And I'm totally agree. It's a powerful tool. And then that way, you know, if we made all our decisions as educators that are revolved around that building's mission statement, that building's vision, the district mission statement, the district's vision, then I think we can do powerful things and totally change the culture of not only the buildings, but the entire district. So next, we're gonna wrap things up on this hangout, and we're gonna discuss habit 3, which is putting the first things first, which often sounds, well, that's pretty easy, you know, put first things first. But again, it's one of those things that's often not as easy as it sounds. So Tammy, or Tricia, we'll start with you this time. What's one thing you took away from habit 3?
You know, it's old hamster wheel thing. We're on the hamster wheel and we're so busy and we're working so hard and we're doing all these things, but it just sometimes feels like nothing's getting done. Our to-do list isn't lessening at all. Nothing feels quite right. And we don't feel like we're getting anywhere, or we're not achieving the things that we want to achieve. Stressed out and unproductive. And I think this habit for me really is together, because you have to have habits 1 and 2 to recognize who you are, who you want to be, what your values are, where you want to be in the end. And then this habit 3, really lets you see how it lets you identify what's finite in life, what's truly limited, which in the big picture, our days here on earth, they're limited. There's a finite number of them. But in the smaller picture, the minutes in a day, we only have so many. And so once we have identified what's important to us and our values and what we want to accomplish in the end, we can really learn how to use our time to make sure that those things get accomplished. And like you said, Josh, it's not easy. It sounds easy. All this stuff sounds very common sense and easy. It is very difficult because we're so used to wanting to do everything and wanting to please everyone. But sometimes we really need to have the big picture in mind and really look at, okay, where am I going to have the biggest impact that represents who I want to be and the values that I want to impart on the people that I can impact.
That sounds good. Tammy, how about your turn? How about habit 3 for you? What did you take away?
What Tricia said is so true. You know, I make my checklist for the week or for the day and try to check them off. But, you know, does my list really include that big picture? What am I working towards or for? Going back to that habit to, you know, begin with the end in mind. It's a bigger picture. This habit, I think, really made me look back to previous weeks when I'm so exhausted and I feel so busy, or even days. And I think, was my energy spent on those things that were most important? Or was I just going through the motions and checking things off a list, trying to put out fires, if you will? You know, so right now, my personal goal, I think, is to start to carve out time at the beginning of the week, some quiet time to plan and really think about what are my priorities this week. And then as I make my list of things to do, because it's not that we don't make lists, we need to, you know, help ourselves to manage, but are those things really in that bigger picture of who I want to be and what I want to accomplish and who I want to impact? You know, Tricia talked about that hamster wheel, and I think we use that so much here in our district, and it makes me think, do we feel like we're on a hamster wheel because we don't have that bigger picture? And Josh, like you said, I was excited when a staff member suggested that we, you know, develop a vision or a mission statement like Ball did. And I think only then, as a school or as a district, when we have that bigger picture, that vision or mission statement, are we going to actually be able to put first things first?
Yeah, and exactly. And you had a key word in there too. In all reality, let's face it, educators, when you're dealing in the education field with technology, oftentimes our day is filled with firefighters. We can plan to do A, B, C today and not do A, B, C and end up having to do and deal with X, Y, Z. And it's again, the juggling act to go back and really, I like your idea, Tammy, is plan out that week, really put your top priorities and make sure you're focusing your energy and not getting away from those and planning it out more. Another idea topic that was brought in this is if you're not accomplishing those, well, what's taking up your time? What's making it to where you can't? And I'll be the first to admit, one of the biggest things right here is what can also oftentimes take me away from that. Again, dealing with technology, I can get flooded with emails from texts, problems arising on a daily basis, and I get messages all the time. And it's like, you know, if I set this down and maybe make sure I'm prioritizing those messages, those emails in alignment with my priorities, then I'll be a more effective person and get things done a lot more. But again, it sounds easy, but it's a difficult task. I heard another positive leader say one time, you need to sacrifice your cell phone, put down your cell phone, because at the end of the day, your cell phone isn't bringing you anything but a bill. And that's the truth. This thing doesn't bring anything but a bill on a monthly basis. So refocus, plan better. Again, with education, you're always going to have those fires, but knowing that vision, knowing that mission statement, I think will really help align your priorities and your planning of the week. So that's great, ladies. That's habits 1, 2, and 3. Do either of you have any closing comments before we end this hangout?
I'd just like to say the opportunity to discuss these habits, and again, for participating with our staffs with them. I think these habits, as we have all been talking, we've been talking about ourselves and our staffs, but I also think about it in terms of our students. And I think, Josh, when you were just talking about putting first things first, that's something we try to teach our students as well. So I think the impact these habits can have on lives is just endless.
I agree. I just think that, you know, in going through this book study with more than just myself, being able to talk to both of you about it, being able to get on the Google Classroom and see who has some takeaways from the book study has been probably more powerful than me just reading through it myself and reflecting myself, because everyone takes away something different. And to hear someone verbalize that, I think helps me to maybe pull something out that I didn't see before. And again, as Tricia said, I think, you know, for our district, being able to use some of these things in our schools and in our district, just to move forward with that bigger picture. It's exciting to see where we're going to go.
Awesome. I agree with both of you, and I agree. Together is always better. Together we can accomplish more. If we're more in sync, more on board, then the better change I think we can make. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the book. I'm looking forward to maybe jumping on another hangout and getting some others involved and getting everybody else on board. So, ladies, I want to tell you thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your book study. We're going to sign off on this hangout and hopefully get back together to finish the rest of the book. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you.